What happens when one of Britain's most beloved crooners comes face to face with a host who refuses to back down from the most controversial topics? You won't believe what unfolds when Sir Tom Jones sits across from Lorraine Kelly in what was supposed to be a light-hearted morning chat, only to witness the most explosive confrontation in daytime television history. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds. The tension in the studio was palpable from the moment Sir Tom Jones walked onto the set. What viewers at home couldn't see was the icy exchange that had already taken place during the commercial break, where Lorraine had made it clear she wasn't planning to stick to the agreed talking points. The legendary Welsh singer, dressed impeccably in a dark suit, took his seat with the kind of dignified composure that had carried him through decades in the spotlight, but there was something different in his eyes, a wariness that suggested he knew this wasn't going to be the usual promotional appearance. As the cameras rolled and the familiar morning show music faded, Lorraine Kelly leaned forward with that trademark smile that millions of viewers had come to know, but those who worked closely with her recognized the predatory gleam that meant she was about to go for the jugular. "Tom, lovely to have you here," she began, her Scottish accent carrying just a hint of something sharper beneath the surface warmth. "Now, I know we're supposed to talk about your new album, but I think our viewers deserve to hear about something a bit more current, don't you think?" Sir Tom's eyebrows raised slightly, his famous voice carrying its usual measured tone as he responded, "Well, Lorraine, I'm here to talk about the music. That's what we agreed on, isn't it?" There was already a subtle tension in his posture, the way he shifted almost imperceptibly in his chair, suggesting he was preparing for whatever curveball was about to come his way. But Lorraine wasn't backing down. In fact, she seemed energized by his resistance, leaning back in her chair with the confidence of someone who held all the cards. "Oh, come now, Tom. You can't expect to sit in that chair and pretend like nothing's happened. The stories that have been circulating, the allegations from former backing singers, surely you owe it to your fans to address these things directly." The atmosphere in the studio shifted dramatically. Sir Tom's jaw tightened, and for a moment, the only sound was the barely audible hum of the cameras. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped to that lower register that had made him famous, but now it carried an edge of genuine anger. "Lorraine, I came here in good faith to discuss my work, my art. If you want to play tabloid journalist, perhaps you should have been more upfront about your intentions." What happened next would become the stuff of television legend. Instead of backing down or offering a diplomatic transition, Lorraine doubled down with the kind of aggressive questioning that would make even the most hardened political interviewer blush. "But Tom, these aren't just tabloid stories anymore, are they? We're talking about serious allegations of inappropriate behavior during your Vegas residency. Women who worked with you, who trusted you, who are now saying—" "Stop right there," Sir Tom interrupted, his voice cutting through her words like a blade. The legendary performer stood up slightly in his chair, his eyes flashing with a fury that decades of media training couldn't quite contain. "You have no right to sit there and repeat unsubstantiated gossip as if it were fact. These are people's lives you're playing with, including mine." The tension was now so thick you could cut it with a knife, and viewers at home were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't the usual gentle back and forth of morning television. This was a full-scale confrontation between two titans of British entertainment, and neither was willing to give an inch. Lorraine, however, seemed to thrive on the conflict. Her eyes lit up with the kind of excitement that comes from knowing you've struck a nerve, and she pressed forward with relentless determination. "But surely, Tom, if these allegations are false, wouldn't the best thing be to address them head-on? Your silence has been deafening, and frankly, some people are starting to wonder what you're hiding." That was the moment everything changed. Sir Tom Jones, a man who had faced down hostile crowds, survived decades in one of the most cutthroat industries in the world, and maintained his dignity through countless controversies, finally reached his breaking point. His voice, when it came, was barely controlled fury wrapped in that distinctive Welsh lilt. What I'm hiding, Lorraine, is my disgust at what passes for journalism these days. What I'm hiding is my disappointment in people I once respected." The studio fell into an eerie silence as the full weight of his words settled over everyone present. But Lorraine, perhaps sensing that she had him on the ropes, made the fatal mistake of pushing even further. "Well, Tom, if you can't handle a few direct questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Our viewers deserve honesty, not evasion." Sir Tom's response was swift and devastating. He stood up from his chair with the kind of theatrical presence that had commanded stages around the world for over 5 decades, his full height and bearing suddenly making the studio seem smaller. "Honesty, Lorraine? You want to talk about honesty? Let's talk about how you ambushed me with questions you knew I wouldn't be prepared to answer. Let's talk about how you've taken gossip and innuendo and presented it as fact. Let's talk about the kind of journalist who builds their career on tearing down others." The verbal assault continued as Sir Tom's famous temper, usually kept carefully in check, finally erupted in full view of millions of viewers. "You sit there with your fake smile and your manufactured concern, but what you're really doing is exploiting tragedy for ratings. You're no better than the parasites who follow celebrities with cameras, hoping to catch them in a moment of weakness." Lorraine, for the first time since the interview began, seemed to realize she had miscalculated. Her confident demeanor began to crack as Sir Tom's words hit their mark with surgical precision. "Tom, I think you're overreacting," she began, but he cut her off with a gesture that was both dismissive and final. "Overreacting?" Sir Tom's voice rose to a level that filled the entire studio, his legendary vocal power now directed not at a song but at a target. "I'm reacting exactly as any decent person should when confronted with this kind of gutter journalism. You've ambushed me. You've assassinated my character. And you've done it all with that sanctimonious smile that makes my skin crawl." The confrontation reached its crescendo as Sir Tom began to remove his microphone, his movements deliberate and filled with contempt. "I've been in this business for over 50 years, Lorraine, and I've dealt with every kind of interviewer imaginable. But I've never, in all that time, encountered someone who so completely lacks basic human decency." As he stood to leave, Sir Tom delivered one final, crushing blow that would be replayed on social media for weeks to come. "You want to know what I think about these allegations? I think they're exactly what you'd expect from a world where people like you are given platforms to spread poison. And I think anyone who believes them without evidence deserves the kind of journalism they get." With that devastating parting shot, Sir Tom Jones walked off the set of Lorraine Kelly's show, leaving behind a stunned host, a bewildered crew, and millions of viewers who had just witnessed one of the most explosive confrontations in British television history. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the sudden silence of the studio, marking the end of what was supposed to be a simple promotional interview, and the beginning of what would become one of the most talked about moments in morning television.